Yo, my name's Sydney and I'm 11. And last summer, my mom straight up ghosted me for a month to live her best life in Europe. Her goodbye was a single crumpled $20 tossed into my hand and a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. She told me I was independent now and to just order food if I got hungry. I stood there in the empty hallway, clutching that 20 like it was a life raft, watching her roll her suitcase down the driveway. No babysitter, no plan, just a door slammed in my face. I tried to act tough, telling myself I could handle this like a boss, but my hands were shaking so hard I could barely stand. To her, I wasn't a kid anymore. I was just an obstacle she'd finally cleared. I lined up the few cans in the pantry and checked the fridge, which was already looking pretty mid. I pushed the fear down, trying to convince myself that being independent was a flex I could actually pull off. But let's be real, $20 for a month, that's not a budget. That's a joke. The silence in the house started getting heavy, turning into something way darker than just being lonely. My mom thought she was leaving a little adult behind, but she was really just setting a timer on a disaster. She even tossed a shiny emergency credit card on the counter like she was doing me a favor. There was just one massive problem. The card wasn't activated and I didn't have the PIN. I was 11 years old, starving and holding a dead credit card. You won't believe the game I had to play just to survive the first week. Again, the evidence I started collecting that would eventually ruin my mother's life. Day one was a total fail. I tried to order a pizza, but every app I tried rejected that emergency card over and over. It was just me, a piece of plastic that was basically a paperweight, and my lone 20. I decided to make it a game to keep from crying. I sliced bread so thin you could practically see through it and sprayed peanut butter like it was gold leaf. I even joked to myself that this would be a story one day. But by day 3, the joke wasn't funny anymore. My pantry looked like a before picture in a commercial about world hunger. I had a couple of cans I couldn't open without sliced fingers, a cereal box that was 90% air, and a jar of pickles I absolutely hated. My stomach was growling so loud it was embarrassing even though the house was empty. To drown out the sound of the house creaking and my own thoughts, I turned the TV on and just let random shows play for hours. I eventually cracked open my mom's laptop. Seeing her work mails stacked up like they were the most important thing in the world made something inside me flip. I grabbed a notebook and wrote one word at the top: evidence. Underneath, I listed the facts. Left alone at 11, $20. No food plan. No check-ins. If she wanted me to be an adult, I was going to document her parenting with receipts. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a witness. But as the hunger fog started to set in, I realized I might not last long enough to show anyone my notes. Then on day 7, someone knocked on the door. By day 5, I was down bad. My brain felt like it was wrapped in a thick fog, and I'd get dizzy just standing up to go to the bathroom. I found a half-empty box of cereal in the back of the cupboard and ate it dry, one piece at a time, trying to make the meal last an hour. I checked my phone. Still no calls for Mom. Not even a "Hey, you alive" text. I added a new line to my notebook. If I disappear, this proves it wasn't my fault. That was the moment my mindset shifted from survival to justice. This wasn't just about making it until she got back from Paris. It was about making sure everyone knew what she'd done. I pulled out my phone and started recording videos. Day 3, I whispered to the camera, my face looking tinny and pale on the screen. I'm still alone. The card doesn't work. I ate the last real food yesterday. I looked out the window at the kids riding bikes and the neighbors living their normal lives, wondering if they had any idea I was fading away next door. I whispered to the empty driveway, you chose Europe over me. You have no idea what this is going to cost you. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. 3 sharp knocks followed. I froze, cereal crumbs on my fingers, wondering if I should hide or finally let the world in. Opening that door was the scariest thing I've ever done. Standing there was a man from my school who knew something was wrong. But was I ready to betray my parents to save myself? It was Mr. Hughes, my school counselor. He looked way different without a classroom behind him, wearing a green jacket and a worried expression. He told me he'd been trying to reach my parents, but they were hosting his calls. My first instinct, lie. Tell him everything was juxy and my parents were just at the store. But then I looked at my shaking hands and stepped back, letting the silence of the empty house speak for itself. He walked in and his eyes immediately started scanning the room like a detective. He saw the empty fruit bowl, the bare counters, and the sink full of dishes I was too weak to wash. "Are your parents at work?" he asked. I felt the truth bubbling up. "They were in Europe," I said, my voice sounding totally flat. He nearly choked. "For a month." "Who's staying with you?" I took a deep breath. "Just me. They said I was mature enough." I saw his face shift from polite concern to emergency mode. He sat me down and asked how long I'd been alone. "A week," I whispered. When I told him about the $20 and the dead credit card, he didn't look at me like a student who forgot her homework. He looked at me like a crime scene. Mr. Hughes told me what was happening had a name: neglect. And once he made the call to Child Protective Services, there was no going back. My mom's vacation was about to become a legal nightmare. Mr. Hughes didn't sugarcoat it. He told me that leaving an 11-year-old alone for a month is straight up illegal. My heart was fluting. "Consequences," I repeated. "That's what I wanted. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she did." I showed him my notebook, the one labeled evidence. He didn't ignore the silence in the house. He felt it. Then the neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, came over. She looked at me like I was a ghost and asked why I didn't come to her sooner. I blurted out that I didn't want to look weak. My parents had spent years conditioning me to be their little adult so they could avoid actual parenting. But Mrs. Johnson told me something that changed everything. Asking for help isn't weak. It's survival. A caseworker named Miss Lopes arrived and started documenting everything. The empty fridge, the trash can with only a few wrappers, and that useless credit card on the counter. I felt a flare of satisfaction. While they talked, I set up my phone and recorded one more clip of the caseworker's bag on my kitchen chair. "This is what my mom will walk into when she comes back," I told the camera. I moved into Mrs. Johnson's house that night, but the drama was just getting started. When my mom finally called from Europe, she wasn't worried about me. She was worried about her reputation. There was a man from my school who knew something was wrong. But was I ready to betray my parents to save myself? Living at Miss Johnson's felt like an alternate reality. Her house smelled like vanilla, and there was actual food, not just crumbs. But on the second night, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. I put it on speaker, my fingers trembling. She didn't ask if I was okay. Her first words were, "Cindy, what is going on? Why is a caseworker emailing me? Do you have any idea what this looks like for Meg?" Classic. She was worried about her clout while I'd been eating dry cereal for a week. I told her the truth. They saw the house. They saw the fridge. And they knew she left me with $20. She immediately tried to gaslight me. "You were exaggerating. You were so dramatic. I can't believe you turn people against us like this." She was more upset about her reputation than my safety. Miss Johnson had heard enough. She leaned into the phone and told my mom straight up, "This ain't about reputation. It's about safety." My mom's voice went cold, threatening consequences when she got back. She hung up on me, but the caseworker had news. My parents were coming home early, but not for a hug. They were coming for a fight. I had 2 days to prep my evidence for the final showdown in our kitchen. The next 2 days were a blur of receipts. We didn't rehearse. We just organized the facts. The caseworker printed my statements, the logs showing 0 check-in calls and photos of the empty pantry. We even had the screenshots of my mom's Paris selfies with the caption, "Finally free for a month." Free from what? Free from me. I went back into my house on the morning of their return. It smelled stale, like a place that had been abandoned. We set the kitchen table like a courtroom. The evidence notebook was open to page 1. My phone was front and center, queued up to the video of my tired, hungry face from day 3. I was terrified, but Miss Lopes told me I didn't have to protect them from the truth anymore. We heard the car tires on the driveway, doors slamming, muffled laughter. They had no idea they were walking into an ambush of their own making. My legs felt like rubber, but I held my ground. The door handle turned, the lock clicked, and the before part of my life officially ended. My mom walked in wearing a stylish coat and sunglasses, looking like she'd just stepped off a runway. When she saw the room full of officials and her 11-year-old daughter standing by Ab's file, her smile didn't just fade, it vanished. "What is this?" my mom demanded, dropping her suitcase. My dad tried to play it off with a fake laugh, talking about how I am a mature 11-year-old, and it was all a misunderstanding. But Miss Lopez wasn't buying the cap. She dropped the activation record for the credit card on the table. "It was never set up," she said. Then she showed the photos of the expired food. My mom snapped, calling me dramatic and saying I like to write stories. That's when I hit play on the video. My own small, shaky voice filled the room. "I ate the last decent thing yesterday. If you were seeing this," someone finally asked what happened to me. My mom slapped a hand over her mouth. My dad's shoulders just sank. "They were caught in fork." The supervisor didn't hold back. She told them that leaving me like that was legal neglect. There was an emergency order. I wasn't going home with them. My mom started crying, begging me to tell the truth so they could start over. She told me adults need time away, too. But I looked her right in the eyes and used her own favorite line against her. "Actions have consequences. I chose myself. I stayed with Mrs. Johnson while my parents had to face a judge. But the real revenge, it wasn't the legal trouble. It was what I learned about my own strength." The court hearing was a vibe check they weren't prepared for. My videos and notebook were entered into the record as official evidence. My parents looked so small sitting at that table listening to strangers describe their choices. In the end, they didn't go to jail, but they lost the right to be alone with me. They lost the good guy image they worked so hard to keep. That summer I learned that help isn't a weakness, and the truth is the ultimate clapback. My mom still sends me these long-winded paragraphs about how she's changed. But some things can't be unwritten. She walked into a house expecting stories and souvenirs, but she found a daughter who had turned every empty shelf and unanswered call into a weapon. She realized too late that her independent speech was just a cover for neglect. "I am not a little adult anymore. I'm a kid who knows her worth." So I have to ask, if you were 11 and left with nothing but a 20 and a dream, would you bury the truth to protect your parents' clout, or would you let the receipts speak for themselves? My name's Sydney and I'm 11. And last summer, my mom straight up ghosted me for a month to live her best life in Europe. Her goodbye was a single crumpled $20 tossed into my hand and a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. She told me I was independent now and to just order food if I got hungry. I stood there in the empty hallway, clutching that 20 like it was a life raft, watching her roll her suitcase down the driveway. No babysitter, no plan, just a door slammed in my face. I tried to act tough, telling myself I could handle this like a boss, but my hands were shaking so hard I could barely stand. To her, I wasn't a kid anymore. I was just an obstacle she'd finally cleared. I lined up the few cans in the pantry and checked the fridge, which was already looking pretty mid. I pushed the fear down, trying to convince myself that being independent was a flex I could actually pull off. But let's be real, $20 for a month, that's not a budget. That's a joke. The silence in the house started getting heavy, turning into something way darker than just being lonely. My mom thought she was leaving a little adult behind, but she was really just setting a timer on a disaster. She even tossed a shiny emergency credit card on the counter like she was doing me a favor. There was just one massive problem. The card wasn't activated and I didn't have the PIN. I was 11 years old, starving and holding a dead credit card. You won't believe the game I had to play just to survive the first week. Again, the evidence I started collecting that would eventually ruin my mother's life. Day one was a total fail. I tried to order a pizza, but every app I tried rejected that emergency card over and over. It was just me, a piece of plastic that was basically